The sound of my laptop shattering against the wall echoed through our living room. I flinched but kept my spine straight, refusing to show fear as my father's face turned a deeper shade of red. "Maya, you ungrateful child," he roared, his accent thickening with rage. "Do you know how long we've planned this? The Sharmas are one of the most respected families in our community." My mother sat on the cream leather sofa, dabbing at her eyes with the edge of her designer sari. "What will people say?" she whispered, more concerned with appearances than my happiness. "We've already sent out the wedding invitations. My name is Maya Patel, and at 24, I was about to lose everything because I refused to marry a man I'd met exactly twice. Both times, he'd spent more time talking about his Tesla and Silicon Valley connections than trying to get to know me as a person. "I don't care about the Sharmas or their money," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I won't marry Arun. I don't love him, and I never will." Love. My father spat the word like it was poison. Love is a fantasy from your American movies. Marriage is about family, responsibility, tradition. We came to this country with nothing, worked our fingers to the bone to give you everything. And this is how you repay us. I glanced at my broken laptop, thinking of the countless hours of code stored on its hard drive. The startup I'd been building in secret for the past year. The dream I hadn't dared share with my traditional parents. They paid for my computer science degree at Stanford, expecting me to land a safe corporate job and marry whoever they chose. Instead, I'd been working on an AI algorithm that could revolutionize personal finance. "I'm building something," I said, finally ready to tell them the truth. "A company. My algorithm could help millions of people manage their money better. I don't need to marry Arun for financial security. I can make it on my own." The laugh that erupted from my father was cruel and dismissive. "A company? You think you can succeed in the tech world without our support, without the connections this marriage would bring?" "Yes," I said simply. "I do." My mother stood up, her face hardening. "Maya, enough of this nonsense. You will marry Arun next month as planned. End of discussion." I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the words I knew would change everything. "No, Mom, I won't." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face went from red to purple, and my mother's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. "Then you are no longer our daughter," my father said, his voice ice cold. "Pack your things and get out. Don't expect a single rupee from us. Let's see how your precious company survives without our money." My mother didn't say a word, just turned her back on me, her shoulders shaking with either sobs or rage. I couldn't tell which. I walked to my room in a daze, pulling out a suitcase and filling it with essentials. Clothes, documents, my backup hard drive. My hands trembled as I changed my bank password, knowing my father would try to freeze my account. I had some savings from freelance coding jobs, enough to rent a cheap apartment for a few months if I was careful. As I dragged my suitcase down the curved staircase of our mansion, the home I'd grown up in, memories flooded my mind. Learning to ride a bike in the circular driveway, doing homework at the kitchen island, celebrating Diwali with elaborate decorations and sweets. But those happy memories were now tainted by the reality of conditional love. My father stood by the front door, his arm around my sobbing mother. "Once you walk out that door," he said, "don't ever think of coming back unless you're ready to apologize and accept the marriage." I paused at the threshold, looking back at them one last time. "I love you both," I said softly, "but I won't sacrifice my dreams or my happiness for your idea of tradition." The door slammed behind me with a finality that made my heart crack. I loaded my suitcase into my old Honda Civic, the one my father had complained about when I refused the BMW he'd offered, and drove away from everything I ever known. That night, I crashed on my best friend Sarah's couch, trying to figure out my next move. She sat with me until 3 a.m., letting me cry and rage and finally plan. "You can stay here as long as you need," she said, squeezing my hand. "But Maya, what are you going to do about your company? Without your parents' connections?" I wiped my eyes, pulling out my phone to show her the latest prototype of my algorithm. "I'll find investors who believe in the technology, not just my family name. The algorithm works, Sarah. I know it does." The next few weeks were a blur of apartment hunting, job interviews, and endless pitching. I found a tiny studio in a less desirable part of San Francisco, took a part-time job as a coding instructor to pay the bills, and spent every other waking moment refining my algorithm. My phone would light up with messages from relatives and family friends, all expressing their disappointment, telling me to apologize to my parents before it was too late. I blocked them one by one, focusing instead on building my company. The rejection letters from investors started piling up. Too risky. Not enough traction. Come back when you have more experience. Each one felt like another door slamming in my face, but I refused to give up. 3 months after leaving home, I was running dangerously low on savings when I got an email that changed everything. A partner at a prominent VC firm had heard about my algorithm through one of my Stanford professors. They wanted to meet. I spent days preparing for the pitch, knowing this might be my only shot. The morning of the meeting, I put on my most professional outfit, a simple black dress from my previous life, and took a deep breath. Your technology is impressive, the lead partner said after my presentation. But what really interests us is your passion and resilience. We've heard about your story, Ms. Patel. Not many people would walk away from everything to pursue their dreams. I gripped my hands tightly in my lap. Sometimes you have to risk everything to build something meaningful. He smiled, sliding a term sheet across the table. We'd like to offer you $2 million in seed funding. My vision blurred with tears as I looked at the numbers, but I forced myself to focus. This wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. This was about building something that could help people, about showing other young women from traditional backgrounds that they could chart their own path. I signed the papers that afternoon, and FinWise Technologies was officially born. The next year was a whirlwind of hiring, product development, and user acquisition. My algorithm, refined and expanded with the help of a talented team, was helping thousands of people better understand and manage their finances. My parents' silence continued, but I heard through the grapevine that Arun had married someone else, a doctor from a good family, and that my mother had taken to telling people I was studying abroad. Their denial of my success hurt, but I channeled that pain into working harder. FinWise grew faster than anyone expected. Our user base doubled, then tripled. Major financial institutions started reaching out about partnerships. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in tech magazines, named to 30 under 30 lists. But nothing prepared me for the call that came 18 months after I walked out of my parents' house. It was from one of the largest fintech companies in the world. Ms. Patel, the CEO said, "We've been watching FinWise's growth with great interest. We'd like to discuss an acquisition." The acquisition offer was staggering, $600 million. The number didn't feel real as I stared at the documents spread across my desk. 2 years ago, I'd been sleeping on a friend's couch, and now you've built something extraordinary here, my lead investor said during the final negotiations. Are you sure you want to sell? I thought about it carefully. The acquisition would mean our technology could help millions more people, and my team would be well taken care of. Plus, they wanted me to stay on as head of innovation with complete creative control. Yes, I said firmly. It's the right move. The day the acquisition was announced, my phone exploded with notifications. TechCrunch, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, they all wanted interviews. But the message that made my hands shake came from an unexpected source. My cousin Priya. "Maya, have you seen the news? Your father collapsed when he saw the headlines. He's in the hospital." My heart stopped. Despite everything, the thought of my father being ill made my chest tighten. I called Priya immediately. "It's not serious," she assured me. "Just stress and high blood pressure. But Maya, maybe it's time. They've seen what you've built now. They can't deny your success anymore." I sat in my office, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Success had healed many wounds, but the pain of my parents' rejection still lingered. "Send me the hospital details," I said finally. An hour later, I stood outside my father's private room at Stanford Medical Center, my heart pounding. Through the window, I could see my mother sitting by his bed, looking older than I remembered. My father was awake, staring at a muted TV that was, ironically, playing a news segment about FinWise's acquisition. I knocked softly and entered. The silence was heavy as both my parents turned to look at me. "Maya," my mother whispered, her eyes filling with tears. My father's face was unreadable. The last time I'd seen him, he'd been purple with rage. Now he just looked tired. "The doctors say it's nothing serious," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But you should rest, Papa." He looked away, his jaw tight. "Why are you here?" "Because you're my father. I replied simply, and because maybe it's time we all stopped pretending. My mother stood up, wringing her hands. Maya, we've seen the news. Your company, it's quite an achievement. I almost laughed at the understatement. It's more than that, Mom. It's everything you and Papa taught me to be: hardworking, determined, ambitious. I just applied those lessons differently than you expected. By throwing away our traditions, my father asked, but his voice lacked its old anger. By refusing the good marriage, by choosing my own path, I corrected gently. The world is changing, Papa. Success doesn't have to follow the old rules anymore. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at the TV where my face was still visible in the muted business news. $600 million, he muttered, shaking his head. My daughter. Your daughter who you kicked out, I reminded him, feeling the old hurt surface. Who you said wasn't welcome back unless she agreed to an arranged marriage. My mother made a small, pained sound. We were wrong, Maya. We were so wrong. Yes, you were, I agreed. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because despite everything, you're my parents. And if you're willing to accept me, really accept me, for who I am and the choices I make, then maybe we can start rebuilding. My father's eyes met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Respect. Not just the kind that came with cultural obligation, but genuine respect for what I'd achieved. The boy you were supposed to marry, he said slowly, a run. His company just filed for bankruptcy. The Sharmas lost everything. I nodded, having seen the news. Life has a way of showing us what matters, doesn't it? He reached out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. His palm was warm and familiar, bringing back memories of childhood walks and proud pats on the head for good grades. I am sorry, BD, he said softly, using the endearment he hadn't used since I was small. Your mother and I, we were trapped in old ways of thinking. We couldn't see that the world had changed. My mother moved closer, her hand joining ours. Can you forgive us, Maya? Can we try to be a family again? I felt tears slip down my cheeks. It won't be easy, I warned. Things can't go back to how they were. I make my own decisions now, about my life, my career, who I date. We know, my father said, surprising me. You've proven you can make better decisions than we ever could for you. The next few hours were spent talking, really talking, for the first time in years. They asked about my company, actually listening as I explained the technology. My mother cried when I told her about those first months on my own, and my father's face darkened with shame. You were working on this even before he gestured vaguely, unable to say, kicked you out. Yes, I said. I tried to tell you that night, but you wouldn't listen. And now you're the CEO of your own division at one of the largest tech companies in the world. My mother said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. Now I'm exactly who I was always meant to be, I corrected her. The money, the success, that's wonderful, but it's not what matters most. What matters is that I stayed true to myself. As I left the hospital that evening, my parents' numbers back in my phone and tentative plans for a family dinner the following week. I felt lighter. Success had given me more than financial freedom. It had given me the chance to rewrite the rules of my relationship with my parents. Over the next few months, we slowly rebuilt our connection. There were still awkward moments, still times when their old expectations would surface, but now I had the strength and confidence to address them directly. My mother still occasionally mentioned marriage, but now it was gentle questions about whether I was dating anyone, not demands about suitable matches. My father, to everyone's surprise, became one of my biggest advocates in the tech world, proudly telling anyone who would listen about my achievements. 1 year after the acquisition, I stood on stage at a major tech conference, giving a keynote speech about innovation and tradition, about breaking barriers and building bridges. In the front row, my parents sat beaming, finally understanding that success didn't have to follow their prescribed path. Sometimes, I told the audience, the hardest person to stand up to is family. But sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to help them grow too. Later that evening, at a quiet dinner with my parents, my father raised his glass. To my daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who had the courage to show us a better way. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. And to new beginnings, she added. I smiled, thinking of the long journey that had brought us here. The broken laptop, the slammed door, the nights of doubt and fear. They had all led to this moment, not just to success, but to understanding, to growth. to a new kind of family bond built on respect rather than obligation. To new beginnings, I echoed, raising my glass, and to having the courage to write your own story. As we sat there, sharing a meal and genuine conversation, I realized that sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones that make headlines. Sometimes they're the quiet moments of reconciliation, of barriers broken and minds opened, of love that grows strong enough to bridge the gap between old worlds and new. I had done more than build a successful company. I had helped build a bridge between generations, between tradition and progress. And that, more than any acquisition or accolade, was worth everything I had risked to get here. The day our father died, Rebecca showed her true colors. I always knew my sister was manipulative, but watching her rifling through Dad's study before his body was even cold made my stomach turn. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway, making her jump. She whirled around, clutching a stack of papers to her chest. "Emma," she said, composing herself. "I'm just organizing Dad's paperwork. Someone has to handle these things." My name is Emma Chen, and at 32, I found myself trapped in a battle I never wanted to fight. Rebecca, my older sister by 3 years, had always been the perfect daughter in our father's eyes. Successful real estate agent, married to a wealthy investor, mother of 2 picture-perfect children. I was the disappointment who chose to become a nurse, working long hours at the local hospital and living in a modest apartment. But Dad and I had grown closer in his final years, especially after Mom passed. While Rebecca was too busy for weekly visits, I made time to have dinner with him, help with his medications, and just talk. He confided things in me that Rebecca knew nothing about. "The will reading is tomorrow," I reminded her. "Whatever you're looking for can wait." She smiled tightly. "Of course, I'm just trying to be proactive." As she brushed past me, I caught a glimpse of triumph in her eyes that made my blood run cold. The next morning at the lawyer's office, Rebecca could barely contain her smugness. "Mr. Patterson, Dad's attorney, began reading the will dated 6 months ago. I, James Chen, being of sound mind, hereby leave my entire estate, including my home and all assets, to my daughter Rebecca Chen Morrison." "What?" I interrupted, my heart pounding. "That can't be right." Rebecca's smile widened. "Oh, Emma, don't make a scene. We all know Dad trusted me to handle the estate properly, but something wasn't adding up. Just 2 months ago, Dad had told me he'd updated his will. He'd been concerned about Rebecca's spending habits and her husband's risky investments. He wanted to ensure both his daughters were provided for equally." "Mr. Patterson," I said carefully, "was there a more recent will?" "Dad mentioned updating it recently." The lawyer shuffled through his papers, frowning. "I don't have anything more recent on file." Rebecca stood up, gathering her designer purse. "Well, that settles it. Emma, I'll need you to move your things out of Dad's house by the end of the week. I'm planning to sell it. I've been staying at Dad's place to care for him during his final months." The thought of being kicked out of my childhood home while still grieving made my chest ache. "You can't just throw me out," I protested. "I've been living there, caring for Dad." "As a caretaker, yes," Rebecca cut in. "But now that service is no longer needed. The house is mine, and I need it empty for staging." I watched her stride out, already on her phone making calls about listing the property. Mr. Patterson gave me a sympathetic look, but said nothing. He was right to stay quiet. He didn't know what I knew. That evening, I sat in Dad's study, remembering our last real conversation just weeks before his death. He'd been unusually serious, insisting I pay attention. "Emma," he'd said, "I need you to know something. In my safety deposit box at First National, there's a letter for you. Box 247. The key is taped under my desk drawer. Promise me you'll get it if anything happens." I reached under the drawer now, my fingers finding the small key exactly where he said it would be. Dad had known Rebecca would try something like this. He prepared for it. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank, my hands shaking slightly as I followed the clerk to the safety deposit room. When I opened box 247, I found exactly what I expected. A sealed envelope with my name on it, and underneath, a document that made my heart leap. Dad's real will, dated just 6 weeks ago. Inside the envelope was a letter in Dad's familiar handwriting. "My dear Emma, if you're reading this, then my fears about your sister have proven true. Rebecca has always been skilled at getting what she wants, but this time she's gone too far. The will she found, the one leaving everything to her, was a decoy. I knew she'd go looking for it. The real will is enclosed here. In it, you'll find that I've left the house to you, along with half of my other assets. You've proven yourself to be responsible and caring, while Rebecca has shown me that money only feeds her worst impulses. I'm trusting you to handle the situation with the grace you've always shown. Rebecca won't take this well, but it's time she learned that manipulation and greed have consequences. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. Love, Dad. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Even from beyond the grave, Dad was looking out for me, making sure justice would prevail. But I knew the real battle was just beginning. Rebecca wouldn't give up easily, and she'd already started making moves to take control. I carefully photographed every document, made copies, and called Mr. Patterson's office to schedule an urgent meeting. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about honoring Dad's final wishes and standing up to my sister's bullying once and for all. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Moving company coming tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have your things packed or they'll be disposed of. This isn't personal, just business. I smiled despite myself. Oh, Rebecca, you have no idea what's coming. This time, your games won't work. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change our family forever. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to reveal the truth. The next morning, I woke to the sound of moving trucks pulling up outside. Right on schedule, Rebecca was making good on her threat. I took my time getting dressed, knowing exactly how this would play out. Emma, Rebecca's voice echoed through the house. The movers are here. Why aren't your things packed? I descended the stairs to find her standing in the foyer, impeccably dressed in a power suit, tapping her designer heels impatiently. Good morning to you two, I said calmly, pouring myself a cup of coffee from the kitchen. The movers hovered awkwardly by the door, waiting for instructions. This isn't a game, Rebecca snapped. I have buyers coming to view the property this afternoon. Your stuff needs to be gone. I took a slow sip of coffee. Actually, I have something you need to see first. I pulled out the envelope from my bag. More stalling tactics? Really, Emma? This is beneath you. I have the will right here. She waved the document she'd found in Dad's study. The house is mine. Everything is mine. You mean this will? I asked, pointing to her paper. Dated 6 months ago. That's interesting because I have another one here. Would you like to see when it's dated? The color drained from Rebecca's face as I pulled out Dad's real will. She snatched it from my hands, her eyes scanning frantically. This is a fake, she declared, but her voice trembled. You forged this. Mr. Patterson is on his way over right now to authenticate it, I said. Along with the letter Dad left explaining exactly why he wrote that decoy will you found. He knew you'd go searching for it, Becca. He knew you'd try to take everything for yourself. Rebecca's perfectly manicured hands began to shake. You're lying. Dad would never. Never what? Leave half his estate to me? Never see through your manipulation? I stepped closer. He did both. And now you have a choice to make. We can do this the easy way, or we can let the lawyers handle it. Your call. She crumpled the will in her fists. You think you've won. I've already started the probate process with the other will. I have buyers lined up. You can't just. Actually, I can. I interrupted. And I have. Mr. Patterson has already filed the real will with the court. The house stays in my name. As for the rest of the estate, we split it equally, just like Dad wanted. The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Mr. Patterson stood on the porch, briefcase in hand. I watched Rebecca's facade crack as reality set in. This isn't possible, she whispered. I had everything planned. That was always your problem, I said softly. You were so busy planning how to take everything that you never stopped to think about what Dad actually wanted. The next few hours were a blur of legal discussions and paperwork. Rebecca sat silently as Mr. Patterson explained how the new will superseded her version. The movers left without touching a single box. By afternoon, it was done. The house was officially mine, and the estate would be divided equally between us. As Rebecca gathered her things to leave, she paused at the door. You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the perfect daughter until the very end. No, Becca. I just loved Dad for who he was, not what he could give me. That's the difference between us. She straightened her shoulders, her mask of superiority sliding back into place. This isn't over, Emma. You have no idea how to manage this kind of property, these kinds of assets. you'll come crawling back begging for help. I smiled, thinking of all the quiet conversations with Dad over the years, the lessons he taught me about finance and property management while Rebecca was too busy to visit. Goodbye, Becca. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the estate division. The door closed behind her with a final click. I stood in the foyer of my childhood home, my home now, and let out a long breath. The battle was won, but something told me the war wasn't over. Rebecca wouldn't accept defeat easily. That night, as I sorted through Dad's papers, I found something interesting. Documents showing that Rebecca's husband's investment firm was in serious trouble. They'd been living beyond their means for years, counting on her inheritance to bail them out. No wonder she'd been so desperate to claim everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've done. Hope you can sleep at night knowing you've ruined your sister's life. I recognized the number, Rebecca's husband James. So it was starting already. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and blocked the number. Dad's letter had warned me this might happen. Be careful, he'd written. Rebecca and James are in deeper trouble than they let on. They'll try anything when they're desperate. I walked through the quiet house, touching the familiar walls, remembering all the family dinners, holiday celebrations, and quiet moments these rooms had witnessed. Rebecca wanted to sell this place to the highest bidder, erasing our history for quick cash. But I had other plans. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, asking him to look into James' investment firm. If they were as desperate as Dad suggested, I needed to protect myself. The second call was to the hospital where I worked. Hi, Sarah, I said to my supervisor. Remember that pediatric care program we talked about? I think I found the perfect location. Dad had always said this house was too big for one person. Maybe it was time to give it a new purpose, one that would honor his memory and help others. Rebecca might have wanted to destroy our family home, but I was going to transform it into something meaningful. As I hung up the phone, another text came through, this time from Rebecca's personal number. Board meeting tomorrow at James's firm. Last chance to fix this. Come alone if you want to make a deal. I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file of evidence. They were planning something, but this time I'd be ready. The quiet nurse they thought they could bully was gone. In her place was a woman who learned from the best. Our father. How to play the long game. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I sat in Dad's old study, surrounded by the memories he'd left behind, and started planning my next move. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning dawned cold and clear as I drove to James' office building. I prepared for this meeting carefully, wearing my sharpest suit and carrying a briefcase full of documents. Not that Rebecca or James needed to know exactly what those documents contained. The security guard directed me to the top floor, where their investment firm occupied a suite of glossy offices. Everything screamed wealth and success. But I noticed small signs of trouble. Empty desks, outdated magazines in the waiting area, a slightly desperate edge to the receptionist's smile. Rebecca was waiting in the conference room, along with James and a man I didn't recognize. Emma, thank you for coming, James said smoothly, gesturing to a chair. This is Mr. Wilson, our firm's legal counsel. I sat down, keeping my expression neutral. I brought my own lawyer, I said, pressing a button on my phone. The speaker crackled to life. Go ahead, David. I'm here. My lawyer's voice came through clearly. Recording started at 9:05 a.m. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. Is that really necessary? Given the text messages I've received, yes. I placed my phone on the table. Now, what's this deal you wanted to discuss? James cleared his throat, sliding a document across the table. We're prepared to offer you fair market value for the house, plus an additional 10% premium. You can walk away with a clean break and a very comfortable sum. I glanced at the figures without touching the paper. And why would I sell to you when I have other plans for the property? Because, Rebecca cut in, her voice sharp, if you don't, we'll contest the will. We'll drag this out in court for years. Every penny you inherit will go to legal fees. On what grounds? I asked calmly. The will is properly dated, witnessed, and notarized. Dad was of sound mind when he wrote it. We have evidence suggesting undue influence, Mr. Wilson spoke up. Your position as his caregiver, the timing of the changes. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. You mean these changes? I started laying out documents one by one. Dad's detailed records of every conversation with Rebecca about money. Bank statements showing transfers from his accounts to your investment firm. Emails where you pressured him for loans he refused to give. The color drained from James's face. Where did you get those? Dad kept everything, I said, including documentation of your firm's irregular trading practices. He was very thorough. Rebecca lunged for the papers, but I was faster, sliding them back into my briefcase. Copies are already with my lawyer, the SEC, and in a secure location. Did you really think Dad didn't know what you were doing with his investments? You're bluffing, James said, but sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. I stood up slowly. I'm not the naive little nurse you can bully anymore. Dad taught me more than you know, and he left me everything I need to protect his legacy. I turned to Rebecca, including proof that you knew about James's illegal trading and helped cover it up. She went pale. Emma, wait. The house isn't for sale, I said firmly. I'm turning it into a pediatric care center, something that will actually help people instead of funding your schemes. You can either accept that and move on, or I can make sure every investor in your firm knows exactly what's been happening to their money. You destroy your own sister, Rebecca whispered. You tried to steal my inheritance, kick me out of my home, and threaten me with legal action, I replied. I'm just showing you the same courtesy you showed me. Mr. Wilson was already gathering his papers, avoiding eye contact. He knew a losing battle when he saw one. Think carefully about your next move, I said, walking to the door. Those documents aren't the only insurance policy Dad left me. The drive home was quiet. I felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness for what our family had become. But as I pulled into the driveway of our family home, I saw the contractor's truck already parked outside. The plans for the pediatric care center were moving forward. 2 weeks later, Rebecca's husband's firm was under investigation. She never contested the will. The last I heard, they'd sold their mansion and moved to a smaller house in the suburbs. The pediatric care center opened 6 months later. We named it after Dad, the James Chen Children's Wellness Center. The first time I saw sick kids playing in the garden where I grew up, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sometimes at night, I sit in Dad's old study, now my office, and read his letter again. Money only feeds her worst impulses, he'd written about Rebecca. He was right, but he'd also taught me that wealth, properly used, could create something meaningful. I keep his photo on my desk, next to the center's mission statement. He would have loved seeing the house full of life again, full of purpose. Rebecca never understood that his true legacy wasn't about money. It was about making a difference. Last week, I received a letter from Rebecca. I haven't opened it yet. Maybe someday we'll find a way to heal our relationship. But for now, I'm focused on healing others. That's what Dad would have wanted. The house that Rebecca tried to take from me has become something bigger than both of us. Every day, it helps families facing their darkest moments find hope. And in the end, that's worth more than any inheritance.